So let's create an offbeat synthwave bassline using only Logic Pro native plugins. So in my session here, for those of you who are listening to this episode, I've got a basic drum pattern here, and I'm using the Logic Pro drummer track, and I've got the alternative synth pop Duncan drummer here with a really basic drum groove going on. Then for my bass, I'm using Alchemy. So I'm going to open Alchemy, and you can see here from the bass patches, I've chosen the 80s synth pop bass, and I'm going to give it a rating of 5 because I think it's fantastic. And I haven't played around with this at all. I've just left it strictly as 80s synth pop bass. Then in the editor window, in the piano roll as it were actually, if you press E it will open, I've penciled in some MIDI notes. It's in the key of A minor, this one here. Obviously you can do any key. But each MIDI note is exactly 1 bar in length, and it sounds like this. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the Logic Pro arpeggiator in the MIDI effects section in the channel strip, and it's set to 1/16 in terms of rate, so it's synced to the tempo, which I'm fine with. I'm going to leave it on the note order of going ascending in this instance. I suppose you can change it. Let's have a listen to what it sounds like. Okay, not quite right. It's not on the offbeat. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to change the pattern in the arpeggiator at the bottom here to grid. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw in some velocity for notes 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 was already there. And I'm actually going to turn off the first note, and it sounds like this. There we go. It's on the offbeat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to play around with these velocities. I'm going to drag the second note down, and then you get that sort of pumping effect. And you can customize this to your taste. I kind of like to have like a step. If you view this, it looks like a set of stairs. Drag it down a bit more. So you can create that sort of sidechain effect without actually sidechaining anything. So it sounds pretty cool. I'm also going to boost the octave as well to 2. And let's have a listen. There we go. A really quick way to create an offbeat synthwave bassline. This is the second approach I would take if I were using, in particular, Alchemy, and it also has more flexibility in terms of what you can do with the sound. So let's give it a go. So I've turned off the ARP from the in the MIDI effects here, and once again it's back to basics. Okay, so I'm going to open Alchemy, and in the bottom you've got this ARP tab here, and if I click on that, you can see here, you've got the steps again, the note pattern, and you can actually just drag it up and down like you can in the arpeggiating. You can see here, I've already got it set to that stepped sequence I had before. And the first note is off. As you can see, I'm dragging up and down for those of you who are listening to this on their podcast player of choice. So notes 2, 3, and 4. So I've got that offbeat pattern going on again. In fact, I'm going to drag 2 down. And you'll notice that when I initiate this, you'll get the same effect. So I'm going to turn the mode to up, much like I had in the arpeggiator just now, and it sounds like this. Pretty much the same, right? Well, it is exactly the same, but I'm using the ARP in Alchemy this time. And what you can also do is you can boost the octave as well, much like you can do in the arpeggiator and the MIDI effects. Pretty cool, right? One thing I really like in here is this swing option. Now you've got to tailor this into taste, but I think it sounds really cool. So I'm going to bring it in a touch and you'll see what I mean. That's going from 50% to 59.67%, but I think that sounds really, really cool. Adds a bit of like movement, a bit of vibe to it, you know? Then what I would do is this. I'd go to effects and I'm going to leave the EQ off, but it's got this bass enhancer effect here, which I really like. And I've got the fat setting on it. So I'm going to turn that on. For the audience listening, it's got an amount dial, and I just boosted the amount to 60%. You can also change the tuning as well. But I like the fact it just adds, it makes it bigger, right? It's no longer this sort of like weak. Well, weak's the wrong word, but it's just got, it's fatter, isn't it? It's PHAT. Just makes it bigger, right? And then I'm going to add a bit of reverb to it as well. And let's have a look and see how that sounds. So what with this reverb is, I've just added a bit of pre-delay to it. I brought the size down to 35%. It's got a high cut of 4,000 hertz. I'm going to drag that up a bit to about 8,000. The low cut I'm going to drag to 225. And I'm just going to bring this into the mix. Let's have a listen. I think that sounds pretty cool, right? And that's just using Alchemy on its own. I mean, what you could also do here to make it even more interesting is add some stereo width to it. But in essence, what I've done here is I've used the ARP feature in Alchemy, much like, well, pretty much exactly the same as I did using the MIDI effects. The only difference is I added this bit of swing to it as well, using this swing dial. And then in effects, I've got the bass enhancer, 60% with fat enabled. And then I've got reverb here as well. Only at 8%. Really, really subtle. And I think it sounds really cool. Let's play it again. Not bad. Give it a go, folks.